So we're still factoring, okay? We factored binomials on the quiz. We factored trinomials on the quiz. Now we're getting a little bigger. We've done binomials mean 2 terms. Trinomials mean 3 terms. Today, you're going to see things with 4 terms. How do we do that? We can't use the same tricks that we did for binomials and trinomials. Some of them we can. Difference of squares we can, but that's way down the list, okay? So a lot of these steps, step 1 needs to be in standard form, step 2 GCF, even step 4 and 5 GCF. So it looks like a lot of steps, but it's really, a lot of these are small steps. Not a lot of them are big steps. So that's why it's 8 steps. It's not like these are longer problems, it's just I broke them down a little bit more than I usually do, okay? So when we have something with 4 terms, how do we factor it? We use grouping. We use something called grouping, okay? We're not going to be able to use ABC and the X, right? Because there is no ABC. We have 4 terms. We would need another letter, right? So we can't do ABC. Okay. Okay, so here we go. So we'll work through so let's look at example number 1. We'll work through the steps as we do it, okay? So the first thing is, when do I use grouping? When you have 4 terms. There are 4 terms here, right? The first term is x to the 3rd. The second term is x squared. Then you have negative 25x and negative 25, right? Those are the 4 terms that we have. So it's a polynomial, but it's not a trinomial, it's not a binomial. So that's when we got to use these guys, okay? So the first step is it in standard form? Meaning, does it go from the big power to the next big power, to the next big power, to the next big power, to the lowest power? Yes, it already does that, right? Goes from 3rd, 2nd, 1st, no power. Okay, so step 1, done. Step 2, is there an overall GCF? One of the things that we saw when we were, myself and Mr. Lara, we were grading these, one of the things we saw was that some points were missed when they were missed for GCF, right? Factoring out the GCF, not factoring out the right GCF, or forgetting to do the GCF. GCF is always one of the first steps. So between these 4 guys, is there a GCF that I can, besides the 1, that I can divide them all by? No. No, right? There's nothing they share in common. I can divide these 2 guys by 25. These 2 guys have x's in common. This guy has an x, but this guy doesn't. So really, besides 1, they don't really, okay? Step 2, if needed. That's why it's if needed. Step 3, this is where it changes a little bit. This is where the grouping comes from. We're going to split the 4 terms into 2 groups. We're going to split into 2 groups. So how's that going to look? It's going to look just like this. You're going to get one group there, always a plus in the middle. Always a plus in the middle. The first 2, so the green and the yellow, are going to go in the first set of parentheses. X to the 3rd plus x squared. And then the second 2, the pink and the blue, are going to go in the second set of parentheses. That's step 3, right? That's a mini step. That's not even a big step. That's why some of these are mini steps, okay? That's step 3. So we still have the same thing, but now they're just in groups. Okay. Step 4, look at the first group. Focus in on the first group. Just the first group. Don't worry about the second group. We said overall there's no GCF, but is there a GCF in this group? Yes. There is, right? X squared, right? I can divide by x squared because they both have that to give, right? This guy has 3 to give. This guy has 2 to give. Together they have at least 2 to give. So the GCF there is x squared. So I'm going to put x squared in the front. You've done this part before many, many times. So if I take away 2 powers, I have 1 power left, right? And this is, I saw a few times I saw this. A few people put 0 here. Like they divided by the same thing and they put 0. Or they put this. I saw this a lot. 0. Or I saw this sometimes on the quiz. I saw this. X. When you divide by yourself, what is the answer always going to be? 1. Yeah. When you divide by yourself, you're always going to be 1. Doesn't matter what it is. If it's by itself, it's always going to be 1. Okay, so that's the first one. That's step 4. Step 5 is do the same thing for the second group. So now let me go look at the second group. What's the biggest thing I can divide by both of those guys? 25, right? And since the first guy is negative, I'm going to divide by negative 25. If the first guy is negative, I'm going to divide by negative 25. Okay? So the plus sign's still in the middle. Now I'm going to put a GCF of negative 25 there. Negative 25 divided by negative 25 makes a positive 1, x. Negative 25 divided by negative 25 makes a positive 1. Okay. That was step 5. So now they each have GCFs. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to kind of step back. Now what we really have is 2 binomials. We really have 2 binomials. So let me highlight them. We got this guy. Let's see if I got another color. And we got this guy. Oops. Those are both binomials. How do I know it's a binomial? Because they have a plus in the middle. Okay? Now those 2 guys, do they share anything in common? Is there a bigger GCF there? Does this orange and this purple share anything in common? Is there anything the same you see in orange and purple? An x plus 1, right? An x plus 1 they share in common. That's called the GCF. So there's a bigger GCF there. So what we're going to do is we're going to write down the binomial they have in common in parentheses. So we're going to write down in parentheses down here the binomial they have in common. X plus 1. Then we're going to write down the leftovers as another binomial in parentheses. So we're done with this guy. We're done with this guy. What are the leftovers? X squared plus a negative 25, right? Instead of saying plus a negative 25, isn't that just minus? Is that subtraction when you add a negative? X squared minus 25. That was step 6 and step 7. Step 6 gave us this guy. Step 7 gave us the other one. Last step, are any of these difference of squares? Notice there's a question mark. Means not necessarily going to happen, but if there is, take care of it. Are any of these guys difference of squares? Yeah, one of them is, right? This guy, x squared minus 25. Right? When we do difference of squares, we half the power, so x to the first, One gets a plus, one gets a minus. What's the square root of 25? 5. The other guy was not difference of squares, so we just bring it down. Done. Done. That's called grouping, factoring by grouping. We didn't use the x, I didn't use the box, because I can't. I don't have an a, b, and c. I also have a d. I can't use those steps if you have 4 terms. Okay? That's it. Those are the steps we use. There's no other missing steps that I didn't put up there. They're all going to look a little different. Sometimes, like we didn't do step 1 and step 2. Sometimes you'll need to do step 1 and step 2. Right? Some of these steps you'll use, some of them you won't. Okay? All right, so let's go to example number 2. Okay. We got 4 terms. Okay. So today it's all going to be 4 terms. Today all you're going to see is 4 terms. All you're going to see tomorrow is 4 terms when we do the practice. But on the test, when we take it in a few weeks, there's going to be some with 2 terms, some with 3 terms, some with 4 terms. So it's important to see when you have 4 terms. Okay? Okay, so overall, is it in standard form right now? Yes, it's already in standard form. Check. Factor out, is there an overall GCF between all 4 terms? No, right? I can divide the first, the third, and the last guy by 2, but 2 doesn't go into 5. And the last guy doesn't have an x, so no, there's no overall GCF. Okay. Now we're going to split into 2 groups. 2 groups. Always a plus in the middle. The first 2 guys go in the first group. Second 2 guys go in the second group. Okay, that's step 3. Step 4, look at the first guy. Focus on the first guy. Is there a GCF in that guy? X, yeah, you can't divide by 2, but there is x squared, right? You can divide by x squared. So we're going to put x squared in the front, and then we're going to rewrite it. 2 stays the same, but I take away 2 powers, I only have 1 power of x. So I have 2x. 5 stays the same, but if I take away all of their x's, they have none left. So it's negative 5. Okay. Step 4 done. Step 5. The other guy. So here's the trick. I'm going to show you the trick. Once you do the first guy, I want the second one to look like, to see, after I'm done with the GCF, I want this guy to be 2x minus 5. That's the trick, right? So what can I divide this guy by, both of them by, so that it gives me 2x minus 5, negative 2. So that'll tell you what your GCF is for the second guy. Whatever it takes to give me 2x minus 5. Okay, so negative 2. That's going to leave 2x minus 5. That's the biggest key. That step right there, step 5, is the biggest key because you want to make sure that they have something in common. You want to make sure that both of these guys have something in common, right? This is your first binomial. This is your second binomial. You want to make sure that those 2 guys have something in common, and they do. What do they have in common? 2x minus 5. Let's write that down. Once you write it down, then you can cross it out. What are the leftovers? X squared minus 2, right? Are any of those difference of squares? No, yeah. I saw some of you guys taking a hard look at this guy here, which is good. You should always take a hard look. You should always glance over it, double, just to make sure. This guy doesn't work because 2 isn't a perfect square. Okay. But yeah, so that's the case. You leave it alone, you're done, you move on. Okay. Like I said, a lot of steps, but a lot of them are mini steps. Like you do it really quickly. But I didn't want to skip any steps when I wrote down up there, so that's why it seems like a lot. Okay, so we're going to do the next 2 together, and then the last one will be a problem on your own. Okay, it's an extra practice problem. Okay? Okay, number 3, step 3. Is it in standard form first? First, is it in standard form? Are the powers going down? Yeah, 4, 3, 2, 1 power, right? Okay, so step 1 done. Step 2, factor out a GCF. Is there a GCF overall? Negative 2c, yeah. How come negative 2? How come negative 2? Because I don't want a negative in front. I don't like negatives in front, okay? Unless it's a GCF. GCFs are okay to be negative, but everything else in front we don't want. So we're going to divide all 4 by negative 2c. First thing we do. Negative 2c. And then I'm going to use, not parentheses, I'm going to use brackets for this guy. Brackets are just bigger parentheses. They're the same thing as parentheses. But I'm going to have parentheses on the inside, so that's why I use brackets. Okay, so now division. Negative 2 divided by negative 2 makes 1. If I take away a power, that leaves c to the 4th. Negative 2 divided by negative 8 makes positive 4. If I take away a power, that leaves 4c squared. Negative 2 goes in the negative 10, negative 5 times. If I take away a power, I just leave 1. And then negative 2 goes into negative 40, negative 20 times. Yes?
Should the first C be C4 or C3?
C3, yes. Thank you. You are correct. Yes, thank you, yeah. Yeah, sometimes I make mistakes when I'm going through this, so please correct me if there's something that doesn't look right. So that was step 2. We still need to do step 3. So now our focus is going to be here. From now on, for the rest of the steps, our focus is going to be in here. The negative 2c just comes along for the ride. We're not going to forget about him, but he's not going to affect anything else of those other steps. Okay? So now what I'm going to do inside the brackets, so I have negative 2c. Within the brackets, I'm going to do my 2 groups. I'm going to do my 2 groups, just like I normally did. The only difference is you have brackets. Don't worry about that. Okay, so the first 2 guys go in the first group. The second 2 guys go in the second group. Okay. Step 4, let's look at the first group in parentheses. The first group in parentheses. That guy right there. Oops, super focus. What is the GCF of that guy? C squared, right? Yep, C squared, C squared. So I'm going to rewrite it. Brackets, C squared, parentheses. If I take away a power, I got C. If I take away 2 powers, I got 4. So C plus 4. Plus. Go to the second guy. What's the GC? Now again, I want to make the second group look like C plus 4. That'll tell you what you need to divide by. So what am I going to need to divide these guys by to make C plus 4? Negative 5. C plus 4 brackets. And then I forgot to write my original GCF. That guy just comes along for the ride. Yes.
Does the negative 2c go all the way down into the answer?
Yes. Yeah. So it's just going to. So yeah, I sometimes I say these guys just take the elevator straight down. They don't. They just need to. I just need to remember that at the end, negative 2c is going to go in front of my answer. Yeah. Do you have to keep writing it all the way? No. But just remember in the end, in your answer, some of you did this yesterday. Some of you did a GCF, then you did your problem, and then you're like, oh, I got to bring my GCF down. That's okay. Just remember that negative 2c is going to go in front of my answer, yeah. Okay, so next step. We should have something in common. C plus 4, right? So in the brackets, oops, C plus 4. What are the leftovers? C squared minus 5, right? So that was step 6 and step 7. Are any of these difference of squares? No. Nope. The only other step that I didn't do is I got to write my GCF. I got to keep writing my GCF in front, negative 2c. So this is how you would write it in Delta Math or on a test or a quiz, just like that. It does have brackets. You can use brackets. Brackets, there's nothing wrong with brackets. Like I said, brackets are just parentheses. But since I have parentheses in here, I didn't want to write more parentheses because that's kind of confusing. So I just changed them to brackets.
So when we're in Delta Math, we have to do the brackets.
Yeah. I think they might let you, I think you might not need the brackets, but it won't mark you wrong if you do the bracket. Either way is okay. Yeah, either way is okay. So like that, or pretty sure that would be work too. I would definitely give you credit on a test if you gave me either of those answers. I'd give you full credit. Okay. All right, so we're going to do one more problem together. And then the last one you're going to do on your own. We'll go over it and we're done. Okay. 4 terms. First step, standard form. Yep. All done. 5, 4, 3, 2, and that's where it stops. Okay. Factor out an overall GCF. These have an overall GCF. They all have at least x v2, right? This one's got 2, this one's got 3, this one's got 4, this one's got 5. That means they each have at least 2. So I divide them all by v2, v squared. V squared goes on the inside. I'm going to use the brackets again. So it's going to be v to the third, 7v squared, negative 4v, negative 28. Again, from now on, my focus is going to be on the inside. V squared is going to be in my answer in the front, but it's not going to affect any of my other steps. I just got to remember to put the GCF on the inside. Okay. 2 groups. 2 groups on the inside now. 2 groups. So on the inside, I need 2 groups. As you get used to this and as you get better with it, tomorrow you're probably going to be able to skip some steps. Not skip some steps, but put steps together. Like a lot of these you can put together, like 3, 4, and 5, you can really do together. Group them, GCF all in one. Okay? Since it's your notes, I want to go slow and do each step separately. So the first guy, there's going to be a v squared, right? V squared. So I already have a v squared in front, remember? Now I have another v squared. And that's going to leave a v plus 7. Now in my second GCF, I want a v plus 7. That'll tell me what I need to divide by. So I'm going to have to divide by -4 to make that happen, right? -4 to make that happen. V plus 7. What do they have in common? V plus 7. What are the leftovers? V squared minus 4. Are any of those difference of squares? Yeah. That guy's difference of squares. Half the power, 1 plus, 1 minus. 4 is on my list of perfect squares. 2 and 2, because the square root of 4 is 2. Bring everything down. Even my GCF that I originally started with. So you can write it like that, or you can put the brackets in. Either one of those. Just don't forget about your original GCF. Okay? All right, so what I want you to do is do number 5. Do example number 5. I'll walk around in a second. Let me just add some things to this. Do example number 5, and we will be done for today. Yes.
You know, you said you could do like either or for tomorrow and the math. Do we have to put the brackets? Or
No.
can we do it?
No, you don't have to.
But, thank you.
Yep. Yeah, it's not required. Either, like I said, either one. No brackets, brackets, it'll be the same. Okay. So the original GCF was negative x cubed. Negative x cubed. Negative because the first guy is negative, the leading term is negative. I don't want it negative. And x cubed because that's the lowest power I can take. That's the lowest power they all have in common. Okay. Then I put them into 2 groups. Took the GCF of the first group, took the GCF of the second group. That made an x plus 2 in common. X plus 2, and then x squared plus 16 is the leftovers. That's not difference of squares. It's close, but it's not difference. It's not a minus. So I have to leave it alone. Done.